Okay, so what I would suggest to everyone is just as a courtesy to unmute yourselves. And if you have questions, please send it in the chat box because this at the end we're gonna have Q&A anyway. So as I'm covering through the content, maybe something will pop in your mind, and and just put that question on chat. That would be lovely. So prepare your child for a strong return to tennis. So what are we talking about? This is a strategy that have been used successfully, effectively, and quickest. And I'm quite surprised that some of the players don't really grasp what kind of game style they have, or it's like the first time they've heard of. So I'm going to cover the different game styles. And this is where, when I was with Nick Bollettieri when I was younger, and I was injured for 2 weeks. So when I my first day back, and he had to get me ready for a tournament, I think it was like within 2 weeks or 3 weeks time that he had entered me, and he just like threw me on the court and started playing matches. And so these are some of the things I'm going to cover with you. When and the reason that he threw me on the court right away is so he wanted me to learn how to handle the pressure immediately, because you can go back on the court and then do the drills, but then there's no pressure, and then everyone can do great under it with no pressure. But then once pressure is upon them, they're like, oh, I don't know what to do, type of thing. So I had earlier today sent out the flyer to my contact list, and I actually received some questions, and I'm going to reserve them for later. But it was really revolving around how to control fear, how to help the players to play against players who may not like a certain game style from their opponents. So that was just fantastic, because that's what we're going to cover. It's a different game styles, right? So one of them, it's not by this order, it just happened that it just I put it in that order. The first one is counter puncher. So I want you to think of Nadal, Halab, who runs all day long, gets in people's head, and just like never say die type of mentality. And the number two game style is the aggressive baseliner. So think of Shapovalov, Serena Williams, where they are going for broke. They would try to hit a winner. You can see that, right, with Dennis, right? He's like in the corner of the baseline, and he's trying to blast a winner. Although he's gotten better, in the last few years. So that's a typical baseliner. They just like to hit winners, control the point. And then, of course, you have your third game style, which is all court. They have good hands. They can do chip, drop shot. They're like magician on the court. And you want to think like Federer or Bianca, right? They're just as comfortable from the back of the court as they are at the net. There used to be a fourth game style, by the way. So I see that I have some players here. Okay, and parents. So would anyone want to guess on the chat box what was the number? What was the fourth possible that was not on here? Come on, Matthew. All right. Okay. So the fourth that is not used, is hardly see it anymore, is the servant volleyer. That is just completely gone out the window. And that's not to say that these players, these three different game styles, don't get on the court, in the match court and do a serve and volley, but they are not your Pete Sampras. They're not your, Patrick Rafter, the pure serve and volley type of player. So I see somebody put in the chat box. So if you would excuse me for a second. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. So we're going to stick with the three game styles, these three game styles, which is very common among the players. All right. So we have to talk about, with each game style, the certain characteristics of their game style. if this is super important, guys, for you to understand, because once you understand what their strengths and weaknesses are, I promise you that you are going to be able to be less fearful, more courageous, and handle the pressure on the court. You know, sometimes you go on the court and or you or your child, you know, they are playing completely the wrong game, or they like hate playing moonballers. You know, you're like, oh my gosh, what happened to my child? He's not hitting the ball anymore, or that he or she's losing to moonballers, right? So once you understand the characteristics that I'm going to be sharing with you, afraid no more, because you are going to be able to compete. Okay, but this doesn't mean like it come miraculously going to be winning matches, but at least it'll give you an idea what strategy, how you're going to find solutions on the court when you get into trouble with them. Okay, so strengths for this counter puncher, which we talked about, think of Nadal, think of Halep. Okay, their strengths are, they're consistent. They're very consistent from the baseline. When you think about Nadal, right? He just runs everywhere. He gets a lot of balls back. They have very good court coverage. They just seems to have wheels that run forever, and you know, they tend to just stay on the court and be on the defense a lot. They're not the attacker type, but they get in your head by putting another ball on the court. Very comfortable with long rallies, and they fight like a warrior. So that's the characteristic of a counterpuncher. Their weaknesses. So is they don't like to be rushed. So you take the ball early. So, you know, if you take the ball early, if you can't get your child to take the ball early, they have less time to respond. They don't like that. They don't really like variations. They don't like to see the high ball, low ball, slice balls, short balls, deep balls. And they're not as comfortable at the net. They don't like to be pulled off the court, even though they're fast. But if you use short angles on them, they don't like to get away from their baseline, because that's like their home. And also, their weakness is that they don't have a particular weapon. So everything is it's good. Everything is pretty balanced. Okay, so this type of player really gets in your head, and you know, they are super super tough to play, and we see a lot of juniors are playing like this anyways, because you know, they juniors are not quite ready to be having weapons yet. And our number two player, what did I do with you guys? Okay, our number two type of play is game style is the aggressive baseliner, right? So the characteristics is such that their strengths in big serves, big forehand. They like the serve plus one patterns a lot, and they for sure like to dictate points. They go for broke. I'm sure you've watched Dennis and you are completely in awe. Oh my gosh, how did he do that? How did he hit that winner? Right? Or and then all of a sudden he make a mistake out of nowhere, and you're like, oh my gosh, what just happened? So their weaknesses is that they're impatient. They don't like to stay in long rallies. They're focused because their game is so precise. They're focused. They cannot stay in focus the entire match. They go in and out on their focus. They don't like to stay in rallies, and that's why they're in a hurry to finish up points. They like balls that come at the strike zone, so they don't really like ball above their shoulders. They don't mind it so much with low balls, but they don't like anything above their shoulders or below the knees. They're inconsistent because they want to end the points super, super quickly. So that is the strengths and weaknesses of the baseline, aggressive baseliner. I see some of our players are taking down notes. I am so impressed. And the third game style is an all court, right? So you think of Federer and or Bianca. So their strength is like they have big serves. They are very precise with their serves. They're very precise with their strokes. Not the most powerful player, although they can hit hard, obviously, but not the pace of Serena or Dennis. They have great hands. They can do drop shot. They can slice. They're like a magician on the court. Very creative. They're comfortable from the at the baseline as much as they are at the net. And because they are creative, they are also very unpredictable. You don't know. They just come like, flash in the pants, like, oh, I want to do this. And they do it. So sometimes they don't even have an advance, notice of what they're going to do with the shot. It just comes with that last second, how they feel. So the weakness is that, this type of play takes the longest to develop, just because it's about making the right choices, making the right decision with the ball that they receive. They don't particularly like long rallies, and they are impatient because they create they're a magician. They want to finish it very quickly. Their focus also goes in and out. It's just not possible, for them to stay in the match because creativity requires energy, alertness. So, a match is what, an hour and a half, if not longer. And that's why sometimes you watch Federer, and he does these great champagne shots, and then there are other times he'll just laugh at himself. So that is the different types of game styles. Can you guys, parents and players together, are you comfortable? Is that pretty clear with the characteristics I've just shared? Can you just maybe on the chat box, if you need me to give you some examples, or if you need some more clarification, or you're good? Yeah, okay. So you guys are good? All right. Okay, so I would like to. This is really important, and I know you probably didn't plan on like answering questions, but in order to help you, to get off really quickly with, when the tournaments and competition with tennis starting again, I would like to know. This is very important for me to know that. And it's always is there's no judgment, there's no right or wrong. I just, it's for your own good. Do you know what is, if you're the parent logging on, do you know your child's game style? And if so, what is it? And if you are the player tuning in, player, can you also identify which game style you are? So this is, obviously more importantly, the player needs to know the game style. I've come across quite a bit of players who were unclear of what game style they have, and why it's so important to know what your game style is, because you have to have a strategy, right? When you go on the court, it's about strategy. How do I play? If you are let's say if you're an aggressive baseliner and you're coming up against a counter puncher, right? So you got to know your strengths. Okay, you got to know your strengths and sort of stay away from your weakness. So let's say an aggressive baseliner, you like to dictate points, you like to go for your shots, and with that you also need to accept that you're going to make some errors out of the blue. And for parents listening, so when you're watching your child play, and so you also need to know, right away. Well, I mean, if you don't know now that you know what the different game style is, because I just shared it with you. So if you did not know before, this would be a good time to think about, oh wow, Matthew, what game style does he have? Or Fred, what is he? So that with an aggressive baseliner, if your child has the aggressive baseliner game, he or she is going to make some mistakes where, maybe a sitter, right? Maybe routine shots, because it just comes with the territory. It's not just about Dennis, right? It's not just about Serena. We have seen throughout my entire tennis history, USTA also came out with a scientific study on the different style of play. So I didn't make that up. Okay. So it's super important that players, you have to know specifically what your game style is. If you are a counterpuncher, you're most successful with winning, running down a lot of balls, keeping another ball in play. So you need to be consistent, right? If you're an all court type of player, you have to accept that you are gonna make some really messy mistakes that you really shouldn't make. It just comes with the territory. Now, does that mean you can't get better? No, of course not. And I do want to clarify this a little bit. Just because you have the game style, let's say, of a counterpuncher, it does not mean that you don't know how to volley. It does not mean that you wouldn't serve and volley. It just means that you have this tendency of winning the majority of your points, that you're most successful at is with your style of play. I'm hoping that your coach has, work that with you in dictating or determining what type of game style you have, because you have to know in the end, so you like the sketch, the artist, you can sketch it and make it darker every time you step on the court. Aggressive baseliner, that big serve, that big forehand, that is the key where you have to key in and keep practicing on those. If you're a counter puncher, run down another ball, learn the different variations. The all court player, learn your drop shots, learn your variations, learn to come in, and be patient with yourself. Okay, so those are, and I know that I'm simplifying, I'm making it very simple, because at the end of the day, for the player, when you go on the court, things have to be simple because it's complicated on the court. On top of that complexity, you have your own emotions that go with it. So if you're clear with the type of player you are, then you have to study, what type of player that so and so is. Obviously, the French Open is going to be starting soon. That would be a really good time for all of you, for to, when you're watching matches, compartmentalize them. See if what Patricia just said about the aggressive baseliners characteristics, those strengths and weaknesses, and the counter puncher's strengths and weaknesses, and all court strengths and weaknesses. See if I'm right, and you will find that most of the time, I like to know all the time, but that I'm on the money. Okay, so watch those matches and be clear with your own game style. And parents, so when you have determined, when you have studied your child, what type of game style they are, so that should help you to recognize if they are making some easy mistakes, that you're like, okay, yeah, that just comes with it. Okay. And again, like I said, you got to have to constantly keep improving on the other areas of your tennis. So that is my one tip in preparing the player, your child, for a strong return to tennis. If I can help you in any ways, I'm hosting building the foundation of mental toughness workshop. Is on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. You can email me, patricia@patricia.com, and you can find me on Instagram, patricia_, and on YouTube as well. Okay, so like I said earlier, I received several questions, and I'm just going to share a few with you right now, because it may resonate with you, right? One of the questions was how to get over the opponent's styles that my child is not liking or comfortable with. So there's no such thing as getting over with, but you definitely need to know the game style of the opponent. And I'm hoping that your child will study or at least educate himself, herself, with the different characteristics, and then play, like, okay, how would I play if I'm a counterpuncher? How would I play another counterpuncher? because you're playing the same style. So those are some of the things. And how would you play a counter puncher versus a counter puncher? You need to use in variations, because both of you are going to be stubborn on the court. You're trying to get into each other's head. And you know that the counter puncher does not like to be rushed. So maybe you can take the initiative. You're the counter puncher, take the initiative, take the ball a little earlier, put some pressure on them. So if you're a counter puncher and you're playing an aggressive baseliner, the aggressive baseliner is impatient and they don't like anything above their heads or above their shoulders or underneath their knees. So if you're the counter puncher, put another ball in. They don't like long rallies. Keep them in the point. What if you're a counter puncher playing in a all court player? So the all court player, they don't like long rallies. Again, that's your strength, right? So you work with your strength, keep the rallies going, when they come in, then keep the ball deep to stop them from coming in. So a lot of the times is know what your style is, and also, how to put pressure on your opponent. That is the quickest way. So your brain is always thinking about solutions. Let me check this chat. Okay. The videos will be posted. I think Lawrence is going to send the email out when the recording is available. I actually, I like to actually go back to number one. Okay. In my entire tennis journey as player, as a coach, okay, let me share with you from a player standpoint, because I see a lot of parents I hear. Let me reflect back, go back to when I was a player, right? How my feeling was. From a player standpoint, you're always worried. Okay, when you're looking at the draw, either you're playing against your best friend, or you're playing against another player from the academy, or you're playing against a pusher, right? Those three was my worst nightmare of opponents. I would rather play number one in the world, because then there's no pressure. Because when you play against your best player, I always worry, that, what if the friend doesn't like me? Okay. Well, because friendship is very important when you're growing up, right? Or like playing against a player in the academy, because you know each other's game, you practice with each other all the time. So it's daunting, it's worrisome. I remembered one of my matches at Bollettieri. There was like a little group of us. There was a lot of students, but there was this one group of us, and we were always on the top court, and I would win matches, practice matches all the time. So we went to a tournament. Of course, we both, we played each other in the finals, and we came back, and all the players, so what did you win by? So they just assumed that I won, but I actually lost. Right, because I couldn't handle playing against my best friend, who was also a really good player. Okay, and trained in the academy. So that's like a double whammy right there, right? Or if I'm playing against like moonballers, this is a typical worry for a lot of juniors. When I hear parents say, "Oh my gosh, my child should never have lost that match. The opponent just lobbed the ball, just put it up in the ball, and my kid was either swung this swing volley out, or like completely just didn't even know how to play tennis and pushing it back." This is part of the development, because depending on their age, okay, playing against pushers is a junior's nightmare, because I don't have the strength to put the ball away. I can only place the ball. And then the other, child, they are a good mover, so they keep on pushing the ball up. I just don't have that mentality. I could be playing the right way, but I just can't win the point. And when I'm on the court competing against this pusher, I don't win the point, or worse, I'm hitting everything out. I'm going to let the ball drop. I'm going to run against the fence. I'm going to just do what I can to survive. So I'm going into survival mode. Okay. That is from the perspective of the player. Okay. So, and I want parents to know that, because if you've never played in that, against a pusher, it's very easy to say, why does Johnny not just hit the ball or take the ball in there? Okay. Um, so I think I've covered that. Those three opponents are the bring out the absolute worst in players. Just know that. And it's not just your child and player, it's not just you. It historically, a lot of times that's what happened. It's never easy because you are dealing with a bundle of nerves when you go on the court. So you got to just give you some slack. Once you give yourself some slack, it's amazing how you just like handcuff broken, and then you can just go play your game. Okay. Next question would be, how do you use changes in a point, controlling a point, and getting over fear? Right. I actually, this is a presentation of itself. I actually made that presentation, how to play important point intelligently, in one of my presentations conference in Bulgaria a few years ago. But I will just, this is like a 3-point question part, getting over fear. Um, Unfortunately, you can't. You're not going to get over your fear. You can only develop courage. Okay. Fear is something that we have built in, we're born with, because when we sense that, imaginatively or for real, that we're in danger, right? So the stress comes in and it triggers our response, and we're going to go into fight or flight mode. Okay. When we step on the court, when the player steps on the court, there's a lot of stress involved, and that stress causes them to be fearful. They may not be playing the way they should be or in training, or when they are ahead and they may just be choking or letting go or slip the leads. So why they do that, I can explain, is that when they get ahead, or perhaps in their mind they didn't quite believe that they deserve to win, and when they're actually in that leading position, they're so close to the finish line. Focus wise, instead of focusing on the present, what they're doing so well to get there, they channel forward and start thinking of the finish line. And that's when things just fall apart. Okay. So now, from the parent standpoint, how do you help your child to have less occurrence of that situation? you know just help them to think of the moment. And the best way when you're on court side, I know you're not supposed to be coaching on the court side, but the best way, you're not a coach, just say breathe. Okay, I can guarantee you, when they miss a shot and when they're ahead, they think the world is crumbling down on them, and they feel like they're suffocating, and they feel like they've already lost the match, although they've just lost 1 point. They forget. Just have them breathe, because in order to breathe, to hear your own breathing, you have to be at the moment. And you got to have to help them, to bring them back. Use words, stay here, 1 point at a time, breathe, whichever fancies you. It's just whatever you do, just bring them back. And I will tell you what's not helpful, parents. What's not helpful is shaking your head, putting your head down, okay, or just wiggling in your chair. That's not helpful. I mean, on the other receiving end. Okay, so be calm and just be productive. Just use, like I said, stay here, 1 point at a time, breathe, anything of that nature. It will bring them back. I hope that answers, help to answer some of the questions. Okay, so okay. Well, that wraps up what I have for us today. I hope that was helpful, that you were able to, have a takeaway from, one thing, preparing your child for a strong return to tennis. We mainly spoke about, the different game styles. Study those game styles. I promise you, when tennis get back into tournaments when tennis tournaments come back, you will be right there. You'll recognize what I'm talking about. With that, does anyone have any more questions? If I've answered your questions, like I said, I have this workshop, Mind Fitness Workshop. You can email me, Patricia at patriciahy.com. And without further ado, have a great evening. Have a great weekend. Stay dry and happy tennis. Go tennis. Bye, guys.
Thank you, Patricia.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Patricia.
Thank you.
Bye.